Isn't it peculiar that in an era where we can transmit high-definition images across galaxies, we still struggle to understand our neighbors? That we've mapped the human genome but remain blind to the architecture of our own fear? That we can split atoms, bend space-time, and peer back to the dawn of creation, yet can't seem to prevent ourselves from splitting societies, bending truths, or retreating from responsibility? This is the paradox of our time. We are cosmic beings, standing at the edge of profound possibility, and yet we tremble when the winds of transformation begin to blow. And those winds are picking up. Let's be clear, this is not a prophecy of doom. This is about turbulence. And turbulence is simply the universe reminding us that stability was never the goal. Growth was. At this very moment, we are living through one of the most turbulent and potentially transformative chapters in human history. A shift not limited to geopolitics or economics, but one that presses against the very membranes of our collective perception. It's not just our world changing, it's the lens through which we experience reality that's being recalibrated. Imagine a spacecraft encountering gravitational waves distortions in the fabric of space and time. Your sensors spike, systems flicker, and just as you prepare for technical failure, you realize this isn't a glitch, it's an invitation. That is where we are now as a species, navigating a wave of evolutionary pressure that is not external, but existential. In the language of physics, what we are witnessing may resemble a phase transition state where the system, under pressure, reorganizes into something new. The illusions we once held as constants are now revealing themselves as variables in a much larger equation of reality. It's not magic, it's emergence. Governed by natural laws, we are only beginning to understand the realization that what we assumed to be linear, stable, and fixed was never so. Reality is quantum, layered, and subject to vibration. And we, like electrons, can jump to higher orbits, but only when energy is applied. And that energy, it's here. It's in our geopolitical unrest, in our ecological feedback loops, in the sleepless stirrings of the human psyche at 3 a.m. It's in the dissonance we feel between what the world tells us is real and what our deeper intuition whispers in contradiction. And yes, it's overwhelming. But in science, turbulence precedes transition. In biology, chaos often foreshadows reorganization. In astronomy, collapse gives birth to stars. So the real question is, are we ready for the reordering of human consciousness? Not with bunker plans and escape fantasies, but with grounded inner resolve, mental clarity, and a sense of responsibility rooted not in panic, but in purpose. The Earth is not just shifting tectonically, but energetically. Systems rooted in separation, in fear, in power over rather than power with, they're unraveling. And the human nervous system, calibrated for millennia to survive within those systems, is struggling to adapt. You feel it, so do I. But rather than run from the pressure, what if we leaned into the physics of it? What if we understood that this turbulence is not designed to break us, but to break open the shell we mistook for identity? The turbulence is both outside and within. It's the disintegration of outdated belief systems, of inherited narratives, of stories that no longer match the data of our lived experience. And yes, those clinging to the old world out of fear, ignorance, or attachment will resist, some with media, some with missiles, some with memes. But resistance is part of the equation. In every ecosystem, there are forces of entropy and evolution. We are seeing both. There's no need for a metaphorical split into two Earths. What we're seeing is a divergence in awareness. Some are adapting their worldview to match new data, while others cling to outdated models. It's not about vibrational frequency, it's about intellectual flexibility. In the cosmos, those who adapt survive, and that applies to civilizations just as it does to species. And frequency, as we know from physics, determines form. As humanity is bombarded with information, misinformation, emotional triggers, and spiritual awakenings, the collective is being asked to choose, whether consciously or not, between fear and freedom, illusion and insight, reaction and response. And the choice is not a single moment, it's continuous, it's subtle, and it begins with awareness. What are you tuning into? What are you broadcasting? Because consciousness is a field, and we are both its sensors and transmitters. Just as the brain emits electromagnetic signals, so too does the human collective emit a wave hormone shaped by our choices, our thoughts, our action. So when the storm comes, and it will, it is not just about enduring, it is about aligning. And alignment requires not perfection, but integrity. Not control, but coherence. In astrophysics, black holes devour matter, but from the collapse of stars, new elements are born. In the same way, from the implosion of our outdated institutions, belief systems, and psychological comforts, new capacities are emerging. The capacity to discern, to feel, to connect across space, not just with satellites, but with soul. And in this time of turbulence, those capacities are not luxuries, they are lifelines. We are not here to escape the world. We are here to witness it, to be present with it, to act as stabilizers in the great vibrational shift, not because we're special, but because we showed up. And now, more than ever, it matters how we show up. And let us be honest with ourselves. Turbulence doesn't feel graceful. It scrapes, it exposes, it drags to the surface everything we hope to hide beneath civility and routine. But within the chaos, a deeper pattern is unfolding. The systems breaking down are not only governmental or economic, they are neurological, emotional, and spiritual. The comfort zones of the collective psyche are dissolving, not because the universe is cruel, but because evolution does not consult our preferences. From the point of view of a caterpillar, metamorphosis must feel like annihilation. But to the butterfly, it was the only way. So ask yourself, where are you still clutching the cocoon, mistaking safety for meaning? Because in the gravitational push toward higher consciousness, resistance becomes drag, and drag slows your orbit. When Dolores Cannon spoke of volunteers incarnating into Earth during times of great change, she wasn't romanticizing suffering. She was describing a mission-and agreement made not in words, but in vibration. And you, if you're listening to this now, are likely part of that wave. That persistent restlessness some of us feel isn't mystical. It's the result of an evolved brain capable of perceiving dissonance between what is and what could be. It's not destiny, it's awareness. And that awareness is precisely what evolution has gifted us to navigate the uncertainties ahead. But being here now is not enough. This is not a spectator event. Earth is not a school where you passively attend. It is a laboratory transformation where your presence alters the experiment. Your energy calibrates the room. Your silence either amplifies the noise or creates space for clarity. So what will you do when the skies darken? When the institutions we trusted for stability crumble under the weight of their own irrelevance? Will you panic and regress? Or will you become a lighthouse stable, not because the waves stopped, but because your foundation is deep and true? The turbulence will not ask for permission. It will arrive disguised as economic collapse, technological confusion, social fragmentation, even global unrest. But underneath the drama, the deeper shift is simple: consciousness expanding beyond the paradigms that once defined human limits. The old Earth will not vanish, it will persist for those who still align with its frequencies. It is the version of reality where fear governs behavior, where power is hoarded, and truth is distorted for control. But the new Earth, what Dolores called a higher vibrational realness, not a utopia. It is a recalibrated matrix where empathy functions as law, coherence as currency, and presence as power. It is not a place you fly to. It is a frequency you embody. And to reach it, you don't need to be perfect, you need to be attuned. That's the real challenge of this moment. Not escaping the old world, but refusing to let it define your inner state. Think of it like tuning a radio. Both frequencies, the fear-based and the awakened dare, broadcasting simultaneously. The chaos of collapse and the clarity of rebirth. The volume you hear depends on what you're dialed into. So how do you choose your station? Through breath, through attention, through acts of grounded compassion, through questioning the narratives you inherited, not out of rebellion, but out of reverence for truth. In the coming years, as turbulence increases, the human psyche will face a crisis of coherence. People will no longer know what to trust, governments will contradict themselves, media will devour itself, algorithms will entangle fact and fiction until even logic begins to feel like smoke. This is not failure. It is the natural consequence of a system collapsing under the weight of its own dissonance. But in that vacuum of confusion, a new clarity can emerge if we are still enough to hear it. That's why inner work is no longer optional. Mental discipline is not a luxury. Emotional intelligence is not a TED Talk topic, it's a survival trait. Because when old belief systems crumble, they don't go quietly. They collapse loudly through fear, through conflict, through projected blame, and if you're not anchored internally, you'll be swept up in the noise. You'll mistake collective panic for personal truth. You'll forget that evolution always requires chaos before coherence. But you don't have to forget. You can remember your agency. You can remember that you are not here to fix the world alone. You are here to become the kind of person who cannot be broken by its temporary madness. And in doing so, you become a stabilizing node in the network of awakening. That is not a metaphor. Consciousness is networked. Every coherent human being becomes a beacon that recalibrates the field around them. Just as one photon can influence the behavior of another across vast distances, your energy has ripple effects far beyond what your senses report. That's physics, that's reality, and that's responsibility. Because with that influence comes power, and with power comes choice. Will you radiate coherence or confusion, grounded presence or performative panic? The turbulence is a test not of morality, but of vibrational clarity. And when the test arrives, you will not be judged. You will be reflected. The world will mirror back your frequency, and it will ask, are you broadcasting fear, or are you embodying the future? Now let's widen our lens, not to escape the Earth, but to remember its place. We orbit a modest star in a spiral galaxy among hundreds of billions, and yet our daily dramas often seem to eclipse the stars themselves. How strange it is that beings made of stardust have forgotten how to breathe like the cosmos. Somewhere along the line, we traded our celestial origin story for headlines, hashtags, and the illusion of permanence. But the universe, she never forgets. She continues to spiral, to expand, to evolve, and she invites us endlessly to do the same. The turbulence we face today, political, ecological, emotionalis, not separate from the greater cosmic pattern. Just as galaxies form from the chaos of collapsing clouds, we too are being asked to allow disorder to birth something intelligent within us. But this birth is not comfortable. It does not cater to your preferences. It disrupts everything false, including the false self you spent decades building. And that disruption is not punishment, it is purification. In thermodynamics, a system reaches equilibrium only after its excess energy is released. The heat, the chaos, the instability, all necessary phases in a system's quest for balance. And so it is with us. We are purging excess identity, outdated paradigms, inherited fears, and as they rise to the surface, we have a choice. Repress them and remain stuck, or transmute them and rise. And make no mistake, those who benefit from stagnation will try to keep you down. Fear is still the currency of control, the oldest trick in the Book of Empire, but fear loses its grip the moment you see it for what it is. A tool, not a truth. A mechanism, not a mandate. And the media, as a system that profits from your attention, will flood your nervous system with curated crises. Not because it's evil, but because it's addicted to engagement. You must learn to discern signal from noise. Not every scream deserves your ear. Not every headline reflects reality. In times of turbulence, your attention is your compass. Guard it like the sacred resource it is. Because where your attention goes, your energy follows, and where your energy flows, your reality grows. So be deliberate. What you consume, you become. This is not metaphor, it's neuroplasticity, it's vibrational entrainment. It's biology and physics working together to shape your destiny. Now imagine a world where millions of people awaken to this principle, not as a spiritual cliche, but as a scientific reality. A world where internal alignment becomes more valuable than external validation. where children are taught not only math and language, but emotional regulation and cosmic perspective, where wisdom is not hoarded in temples or boardrooms, but shared openly like sunlight. That world is not fantasy, it is a probability one whose manifestation depends on the choices we make now. And those choices are not just collective, they are deeply, radically personal, because the collective is not some abstract blob. It is composed of individuals, of you, of me, of people deciding moment by moment whether to numb or to feel, to blame or to reflect, to conform or to evolve. And in that quiet calculus of daily decisions, the future takes shape. So when you feel the ground shake, when systems collapse and familiar structures dissolve, don't panic, pause, breathe, realign. Remember that the chaos outside is a mirror of the unfinished symphony inside. And your role is not to drown in the noise, but to tune your instrument, to add harmony where there was dissonance, to bring coherence where there was confusion. This is what it means to be a stabilizer. Not someone who knows everything, but someone who can remain present when others forget how. And presence, my friend, is a form of gravity. It holds others in orbit. It anchors truth in times of turbulence, and it cannot be faked. You earn it through inner alignment, through discipline, through deep listening, not to the news, but to the whisper beneath the chaos, the quiet voice of evolution, asking you to step up, not as a savior, but as a signal, a clear signal that says, I will not amplify fear. I will not recycle panic. I will stand calm and coherent in the eye of the storm. And I will remind others, not through slogans, but through being, that we are not here to collapse. We are here to become. To become what, exactly? That's the question trembling beneath the surface of our times. What is humanity evolving into? Are we becoming more intelligent or merely more informed? Are we becoming more connected or simply more entangled? The difference is not semantics, it's seismic. True connection requires presence, attention, vulnerability, and above all, truth. Not objective, cold truth, but lived truth, the kind that bridges the space between mind and heart. And in that sense, the turbulence we now face is not just about systems collapsing, it's about illusions being peeled away until all that remains is what's real. And reality, though often inconvenient, is also redemptive. In astrophysics, the event horizon of a black hole marks the point of no return. Light itself cannot escape. But what many forget is that just beyond that veil, new realities may be born. Some physicists believe black holes give rise to baby universes, entire dimensions folded into the fabric of space. Could it be then that the collapse we fear is actually a portal? A cosmic threshold between the world we knew and the one that's trying to emerge? If so, then the real question isn't how do we survive the fall, but how do we midwife the birth? How do we show up as intelligent participants in a universe that evolves through its observers? Because whether we admit it or not, we are co-creating the next version of Earth. With every reaction, every belief, every breath, we are sending data into the collective field. And the algorithms of life, much like those of machines, respond to input. So what inputs are you feeding the field? Hope or hopelessness? Integrity or apathy? Curiosity or cynicism? The choice isn't easy. In fact, it's the most difficult task of our species so far, not landing on the moon, not decoding DNA, but staying conscious in the face of collapse. Staying loving when love feels impossible. Staying human when fear demands we reduce ourselves to reaction. But that is the crucible we're in. And just like the stars, we too are forged in pressure. In the nuclear chaos of their cores, hydrogen atoms are slammed together until they fuse into helium, releasing light, heat, and life itself. Without that pressure, stars do not shine. And without the pressure of our moment, we do not awaken. So let us not run from the heat. Let us use it. Not to burn others, but to burn away the layers of fear, shame, and falsity that have dimmed our brilliance. Because beneath it all, we are not chaos, we are cosmos. We are the dust of ancient suns, wrapped in DNA, capable of compassion, creation, and clarity. But clarity requires silence, and silence is rare in a world addicted to noise. So we must carve it out daily, deliberately, like astronomers carving through light pollution to glimpse the stars. Meditation, solitude, reflection. These are not luxuries, they are survival tools. Because without inner clarity, we will be pulled into every narrative storm, every emotional tsunami, every political panic. And if we are always reacting, we are never responding. And if we are never responding, we are no longer free. That's the hidden cost of unconsciousness. It feels like survival, but it forfeits sovereignty. And sovereignty, my friend, is not about control over other sits, about alignment within yourself. The ability to choose your frequency, regardless of external static, to hold your course like a spacecraft navigating solar windsnot by resisting the force, but by adjusting your angle. And your angle, your perspective is everything. It is the difference between seeing crisis or opportunity, enemy or mirror, end or beginning. The universe, for all its scale, responds to subtlety. Change your lens and your whole sky changes. And right now, our collective sky is clouded. But behind those clouds, the stars remain. They have never left, and neither have you. Beneath your confusion is clarity. Beneath your fear is purpose. Beneath your exhaustion is potential still untouched. And it is precisely in these turbulent times that potential becomes kinetic. That the theory of who you are is tested against the gravity of who you could be. And you don't need to be a scientist to understand this. You only need to remember. Remember what it feels like to breathe deeply, to listen fully, to live as though your choices matter, because they do. They ripple out. They echo across timelines, touching lives you'll never meet, just as stars long dead still light up our night sky. Your courage today can illuminate tomorrow for someone else. So the question becomes not, will there be turbulence? There already is. The question is, what kind of signal will you send through it? And perhaps the most humbling realization of all is this: the universe doesn't owe us stability. It offers only change relentless, rhythmic, and revealing. From the first quantum fluctuation that birthed time itself, to the complex social structures that now strain under their own weight, everything that survives does so by adapting. And adaptation doesn't mean comfort, it means coherence. It means listening when the signal beneath the noise whispers, there's more to you than survival. That whisper may not come from a mountain or a prophet. It may come in the stillness after a breakdown, in the quiet between breaths, or in the strange knowing that nothing external can explain. It comes when the mind surrenders its certainty, and space is made for something older than logic: awareness. Awareness that your life is not random, that you, the individual listening now, are an intersection of ancestry, cosmic dust, karmic pattern, and possibility. That your pain, your joy, your confusional of itis data that the universe gathers, not to judge you, but to learn through you. You are not here as a mistake. You are not detached from the cosmos. You are a product of it. Your brain, made from stardust, is the universe becoming aware of itself, not in some poetic sense, but through neurons, electricity, and billions of years of evolution. What you perceive feeds back into how we as a species interpret reality. So the question is not, what should I be doing? The question is, what frequency am I holding? Because the most powerful contribution you can make is not in the noise of reaction, but in the clarity of alignment. You may never lead a movement. You may never hold public office. But if you stabilize your inner world in an age of collapse, you become a lighthouse. And lighthouses don't move. They anchor. They illuminate. They guide others, not by argument, but by being. And that is what this moment calls for. Not more noise, but more being. Not more opinions, but more embodiment. Not more followers, but more frequency holders. Because the great divide that's forming is not between left and right, rich and poor. East and west it is between those who live in fear and those who live in presence. Between those who outsource their truth and those who generate it from within. Between those who collapse under pressure and those who transmute pressure into presence. And the irony is that this divide has nothing to do with intelligence, education, or even belief. It has everything to do with coherence. In physics, Coherence describes the alignment of waveforms. When waves are coherent, they amplify one another. When they're not, they cancel each other out. Humanity is at that threshold. We can either continue amplifying fear, division, and noise, or we can align individually and collectively with a higher signal. A signal that transcends the noise of history and remembers we are not enemies. We are nodes on a planetary nervous system waking up to itself. And yes, there will be tremors. There will be systems that resist, truths that sting, and nights that feel endless. But night is when the stars appear. And turbulence, while uncomfortable, is also honest. It reveals what we've been avoiding, it humbles what we thought we knew, and it prepares you not for comfort, but for truth. And truth, when finally felt, doesn't paralyze, it liberates. And that liberation isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the moment you realize you no longer need to be understood, because you understand yourself. You no longer need to control, because you're aligned. You no longer fear the collapse because you see the birth inside it. And from that place, you begin to live differently. You begin to breathe on behalf of something greater. You begin to walk into rooms and change their temperature, not with force, but with frequency. And that frequency, steady, clear, and coherent, is what this earth is starving for. Not more knowledge, not more innovation, but more people who remember who they are in the midst of chaos. More people who are not defined by algorithms, but by awareness. Who are not governed by headlines, but by heartlines. Who do not outsource their power to false idols, but reclaim it from the silence within. This is how we cross the threshold, not all at once, not through revolution, but through resonance. Through enough individuals choosing to stabilize rather than spiral, to align rather than argue, to radiate rather than react. That is the new earth. Not a place we escape to, but a dimension we activate here, in this breath, in this body, in this very moment. So now, standing on the edge of this great unraveling, the final question is not when the turbulence will end, but who we will become because of it. Will we emerge more divided, more hardened by fear and addicted to blame, or will we evolve subtly, deeply, irrevocably into a civilization capable of remembering its origin and imagining its destiny? Because the truth is, we are not passive observers of this cosmic storm. We are the eye of it. We are the stillness in the center from which clarity can radiate outward. And that stillness is not found in theories or doctrines. It is found in you when you choose to be fully here, fully conscious, fully willing to take the next step, not because it's guaranteed to succeed, but because it's true. And in that choice, you align with a deeper law, not man-made, but universe-born, a law that favors coherence over chaos, truth over comfort, evolution over inertia. And once you feel it not as an idea, but as a living current, you realize you were never powerless. You were only distracted. You were never unworthy. You were only misaligned. The turbulence was never the enemy. It was the echo of a larger intelligence asking you to rise. And now, more than ever, we are being called to risen not with pride, but with purpose. Not to escape the earth, but to serve it better. To walk gently, to think clearly, to feel fully, to reconnect the severed strands between science and soul, between logic and love, between mind and cosmos. Because this earth, this tiny pale blue dot suspended in the darkness, is not just a place we inhabit, it is a mirror of who we are becoming. And what we become now will ripple outward into generations unborn, into galaxies unseen, into dimensions unimagined. That is the scale of this moment. That is the weight of your presence. So take one final breath, not to relax, but to remember, you are not here by accident. You are here as a stabilizer in a storm of forgetting, a transmitter of the signal that says we can evolve. We can harmonize. We can remember who we are, cosmic, conscious, and capable of shaping a world worthy of the stars that made us.